This is going easy on Earth, and the year 2023 also was the International Year of Millets. Now, we did speak about millets in an earlier edition, we will link that up over here. But at the same time, as we look back, a lot of interesting things happen, and we are looking forward to all the things that we can do moving into 2024. Now, a quick recap on what millets are and what the International Year of Millets is. Well, the Food and Agriculture Organization and the United Nations recognized 2023 as the Year of Millets, and this was initially proposed by the Indian government. Now, we've all heard the benefits of millets. These are very hardy crops. They have a lot of health benefits. They have a lot of environmentally sustainable benefits. And all in all, they can address many issues that are plaguing the planet. Looking at some of the Sustainable Development Goals, they also target goals like zero hunger, climate action, life on land, decent work and economic growth, responsible consumption and production, and good health and well-being. While there are many benefits, we also have to look at some of the challenges and how we can take this forward, how you and I can be part of promoting, consuming more millets and also be more sustainable. So the first question comes around pricing. So whenever we go to the supermarket, we always look at the price and we see that millets are a little expensive when we compare it to other grains like rice and wheat. How much of a factor is this, and why is it expensive when it is supposed to be a poor man's food?
Millets were consumed by farmers and less by the urbanites. But millets, as you said, it's a poor man's food. But it's no longer a poor man's food, I feel, because it is much costlier than rice and wheat. That is because the supply chain and the value chain for both these two, supply chain and the value chain for millet, is a very difficult one. As you know, there are various types of millets. Some major millets, some minor millets, and each millet has got a separate set of processing. So when you have that separate set of processing methodology, you need separate set of machines, and all this adds up. By the time it reaches the market, again, the price has to go up anyway because of all these challenges. It's unlike the rice and wheat, where a proper supply chain and a value chain has already been established. And now there's no looking back. They simply follow the methodology, the process, and they are ready in the market. Whereas millets, mainly major millets are consumed in our country like jawar, bajra and ragi, and these three are grains. Simply you take them, you can make it into flour or you can make it into rava, and it can be consumed. And these three don't require that kind of a processing as we see in kodo millet or foxtail millet or barnyard millet or brown top millet. These minor millets, which are the foxtail, barnyard and kodo and all, they require, again, the processing is different. So when there is no established supply chain as well as value chain, then it's bound to be like this. So it has gone out of the bounds of a common man now. Millet, so priced high that it is difficult. You cannot call it a poor man's food any longer.
When you speak about processing, I think it's also important to remember that particularly when we're talking about millets, and even now in most of the rural areas, and definitely a few decades ago, most of the processing was done at home, was probably done by hand. So when we are looking at something at a huge volume and scale, we just don't have the machinery to do that. And again, supply and demand also plays a huge role in this. So cost is one factor that is always a deterrent when it comes to choosing between a healthier and a sustainable option compared to something which isn't. But there also is the food habits that we have. We've been used to eating a lot of soft and fluffy food. So how does these habits, which have been generated for decades now, impact the consumption of millets?
Over a period of time, there was a lot of thrust for cereals like rice and wheat and maize. We got used to that now. And over a period of time, as you said, we are eating very highly processed food, soft food, and white in color. These are our preferences. So globally, what is being promoted has also reached us, and we also got into that. Now, to come away from that is also very difficult. Though millets are more nutritious and it's good for our health, nutrient profile is very high of millets, but still we are not able to incorporate in our daily diet as easily as we are able to do rice or wheat. That's because of, one, the availability of millets and what we discussed just now, and second thing, we have even forgotten how to cook millets. So this knowledge is lost. See, when you said it used to be processed at every household, yes, it used to be some 40, 50 years ago. Each household they used to bring, whether it is jowar or bajra or ragi or even maize, they used to clean it and they used to make it into powder or make it into rava, such things, and make some dish out of it. And relatively very good dishes we had when we were children. But over a period of time, when there was a thrust and the government policy changed and there was a shift in pushing the cereals like rice and wheat, naturally when there's a thrust as well as you get used to and demand for it, of course rice and wheat replace the millet consumption. And secondly, rice and wheat, they are procured by the government, and most of the other crops they are procured by the government and they are distributed through the public distribution system, whereas millet don't find a place like that. So only of late this year there was a lot of trust. Last year also there was a lot of trust. We were preparing for this International Year of Millets, and from different quarters we pushed it, from the government, from the central government, from the state government to even the NGOs like us. We started pushing these millets, and then bringing in awareness in the consumer. All this added up to the demand that rose now. And when there is a demand and there is no supply, of course, again you will find the price rising. And we have had some setbacks too. In some states there was drought, and some states there were excess rain too. Like Andhra, Kerala had heavy rains, whereas Maharashtra, Telangana and Karnataka had some drought period also, extended drought. So these factors also played a role bringing down the supply of millets. Because we are in the International Year of Millet, we want to promote millet, we are giving such a big thrust but the supply also needs to be looked into. And that's what I said was the supply chain and the value chain. Both are very important when you want to promote millets in a very big manner.
Yeah, and some of the things which jump out and adding to what you just said is when we talk about push and promotion that you just mentioned, I think most of the food habits that are being promoted predominantly come from the West. And it's also important to note that millets have historically been part of Asian countries and African countries. So there is that factor which plays a role. The machinery that is often used for mass production, again, it is designed mostly for rice and wheat. Again, most of the systems coming from the western side of the world. So these also play a huge role coming back to the pricing and demand. Also to the point of government, we've seen International Year of Millets being celebrated, and probably one of the highlights was at the G20 where millets were predominantly featured as part of the main course which was there. So there are a lot of positive changes, but of course we need a lot more. Now speaking about food and particularly serving food, not only have you been working with the governments, state governments of different states, central government as well, you are a master trainer, you work with farmers, but you also are the head chef in our kitchen. So how difficult is it to cook millets? And just before you answer, you've been cooking a lot of rice and wheat for decades now, and then you shifted to millets probably a few years ago. So how was that shift, and practically speaking, how hard is it to cook millets?
Yes, it is little hard when you do not know how to cook. Otherwise, it is not so hard. See, I have watched my parents cook, my aunts prepare it. So I know the technique. I am old enough now. But when it comes to youngsters or people who want to cook straight away now, then it is difficult, because millets need little soaking and pressure cooking too sometimes, because they have to become soft. And now that you got used to all this soft food and good processed food, to accept something which is little chewy and hard, again you should get used to that too. And when you are not used to eating that kind of a food, it's difficult for you to suddenly take in as a main course. So what we need to do is promote millet, but promote it in a way that people will accept it, and also bring in awareness that do not eat very processed millet. The reason behind pushing the millet to address the malnutrition, you will lose nutrition, you should not lose it at the cost of processing and ultra processing, which is not required. And as such, as you mentioned, we are the major producers, the Asia and the African countries. We also know how to cook millets, how to consume millets. Some decades ago, this millet was pushed in the background, saying that is a feed, bird's feed, or for fodder, and not for human consumption, which is absolutely, it's a very big mistake that has happened, or deliberately it was done. So now knowing very well that is it's packed with nutrition and it has been a part of our diet. It's not that something new that we are taking in. So we should again relearn all those things what our parents did or our grandparents did. And it's very easy once you learn it, because as you mentioned and I also mentioned that we used to some extent process millets at home. So this is now what you're getting is you don't have to do that. You're getting it in a state that you can straight away take it to cooking. So only thing is, because millets are hard grains, they need to be soaked for some time. Just like how you make idli dosa, simply you cannot grind them. You have to soak the dal and rice and to make the batter. Similarly, you have to soak this millets in order to cook the millets. And some millets, because they are very hard to cook, soak it overnight. If you really want the nutrition part, you want to have a healthy diet, yes, this you need to learn to do it.
So there are many things which have faded away in a sense when we're talking about processing and the cooking techniques, and because we've had a gap of probably decades when it comes to, at least in India in many cases, where millets haven't been featured. I think there are many states where millets are still being used, whether we are talking about Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, so many other places where millets are still featured in some of their main dishes. So it's very important to see all of that coming back. And again, to the point which you said, when we are looking at something which is colorful, flavorful, fluffy, millets are probably not the ones for it. And that leads to the next point, because on the supermarket shelves, we see a lot of products which have millets highlighted in bold. But when we think about the fact that it does not have gluten, it is hard to achieve some of the things which, let's say, a refined flour is doing. So would you suggest looking at the ingredients? You said overprocessing, their nutrients are gone. But should we also look at some of the ingredients which are being used? Is millets just being added for the marketing promotional aspect?
Yes, I think so, because just in the last week of November, I happened to go to a joint where millet breakfast we wanted to have. It was a joint where they were serving millet as millet dosa. So I said I'll take millet rava dosa. But I knew when I touched that, of course, it was a ragi rava dosa. It was not totally a ragi rava I could make out. So in the name of promoting millets, where people push through, other grains mixed with the millet, and if it is 90% some other grain and 10% millet, then it makes no sense. So yes, certainly you have to look at the label and see what is the percentage of any other atta that is being mixed to make it more chewy and make it into this pastas and vermicelli and all these noodles. You get now everything in millet, so you have to look into that. That is very important. If you are not dependent on this ready to eat or to ready to cook food, then if you know the technique, it is easy for you to make. Just because you have got used to, see, we were basically consuming atta, गेहूं के आटा, that flour, wheat flour, or maida, rava. These were the things we were used to for a very long period of time. Then came the pizzas, then came the burgers, then came our noodles, pastas, everything. So we accepted it. Now more or less that is also there, and it is we are consuming that. And then when millets are being promoted, now we want to take millets, but why not we take millet in a form which should in which it should be taken, then expect it to be a millet pasta or a millet noodle or a millet vermicelli. Why should we expect? Let it be like, when you go to Rajasthan or Gujarat, very happily they serve in that thali, bhajre ki roti, and it is so tasty. What we call it as exotic is a common man food back in the West. So if we are able to understand all these things, then I think we will not make such a big fuss.
Absolutely. So the right cooking techniques, the right combinations, all of that will help. And when you were speaking, it also reminded me of a few years ago, we got to know that brown bread is actually the same bread where molasses was added. So when it comes to the nutrient content, we again have to be careful what is being used with millets and what other things are being added. So there is a lot of benefits, and as we close out, we can also come back to the point that we as consumers have a huge say in this. We have a lot of power when it comes to shifting this entire dynamic, because the more we demand, the more farmers will be growing millets, the prices would eventually come down, supply and demand. We'll have better processing units as well. This is probably one of the things that is in our control to be more healthy and at the same time being more environmentally sustainable.
These millets, as of now, government has also decided to procure and supply through the PDS. Then it will be, the masses.
That is public distribution.
Public distribution system. Then, it will be easily available. One. Second thing, the government is anyway going to take care of the supply chain, value chain, all that a common man need not bother about, right? Millets will be available. Only thing that we have to do as common man, we have to make it easy for people to incorporate millet in their daily diet. So first of all, we should do a lot of awareness campaigns to make them understand what is this millet packed with, what kind of nutrition, and how they can incorporate. We should never force anybody, make it so easy for anybody to just incorporate at least one meal in one meal or a porridge. For example, your ragi, you can make it into ragi malt, you can make porridge, you can make ragi mudde, you can make ragi paratha, chapati. So like this, if you give them a choice, they need not just eat ragi mudde only, or for example, jawar, when you speak, you only think of jawari ka roti. No, you can make jawari ka roti, you can make jawari atta ka dosa. Like that, if you give them options, they will easily incorporate. And jawari ka rava, which even as a child I had eaten vegetable upma, like we used to prepare with jawari ka rava. So those options should be available. When ragi, again in Tamil Nadu and South, they make ragi puttu, ragi idiyappam. So these are all the innovations, whatever you can try out with rice atta, you can also try. And in both the cases, you only need to put little hot water to make it more sticky and malleable, make it coming into any shape that you want. So this technique, if we pass on to the people, then it will be easy. They will be able to incorporate. So I think we should make that little easier for them to incorporate. And also, just not that white color. We are obsessed with that white color. The white salt, the white maida, white rice. We should also have that awareness. Always white is not nutritious. Any other color also, like the red rice, the black rice. Now we have so many varieties of indigenous varieties of rice. We should incorporate that into our diet. Whole grains, and then also millets, because each millet is of a different color. You make jawari ka roti, it's different. Bajre ki roti color is different. Ragi color is different. So if we are able to accept these things, then it becomes easier. When you don't accept, no matter whatever you do, it is difficult to push. This is what I feel, that that awareness has to be brought in and make it easy for people to accept it.
Yep. There are many things that we can do together, and all we have to do is, at least for the first steps, is start looking at the options which are there, and there are many which are present around us, and we can together bring about a really positive change. So with that, we are closing out this edition. So you can check out our earlier conversation on millets as well. It's on the same channel. We'll link it up. And you can also let us know all the other things that you would like to know about when it comes to being more sustainable and when it comes to going easy on Earth. Thank you so much for listening. This is Going Easy on Earth.